If you come through the Duke Clinic, you know Roy. We affectionately call him Father Roy because he takes the confessions. I'm still looking for that used confessional to put in one of the rooms, you know, actually, no. Thank you, Roy, for being here tonight. I would like to give a little bit of didactic or update on a bunch of things, and then get to some of your questions tonight as well. This is a forum for you to be able to come ask questions, if things are going well, share successes, or just look around the room to realize you're not alone. You know, is anyone following a keto lifestyle? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's just about everyone. So keep your hands up. How many of you have been following for more than a year? Keep your hands up. That's interesting. So a lot of folks just picked up, last year. How about for 2 years? Keep your hands up. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Oh, just me. So I think it's important for a lot of reasons to get together in groups, and we're trying to plant little seeds in the grassroots movement because you don't always get support from other people doing this, and so you might even get people to tell you not to do it. So to be here, coming out, thank you for doing that, to just show everyone else that it is possible to do it, and it is possible to stay on it and be healthy for a long time. So I'd like to just give a few slides, and then we'll get to your questions, and hopefully I can answer them as well. We started a company to scale up the availability of the access to information about keto diets at a distance. That's the non-medical part of HEALcare, and then to get access to the clinical medical supervision as you come off medications as well. That's the clinical part of HEALcare, and I'll talk about that later. You can even invest in this company. It's the only low-carb keto company that anyone can invest in. And I'll talk about that as well. So tonight I wanted to talk about keto benefits beyond treating type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and weight loss. In fact, I was just at a conference in Long Beach, California, and called the Metabolic Health Summit just this last weekend. And I gave a talk on keto medicine. What does it take to be a keto medicine provider? And have you ever heard of keto medicine? Yeah, I know, because I just made it up. It was actually Richard Koffler at Heal Clinics, and over time we just basically realized this is a new era, a new area as well. So at this conference I talked about keto medicine, and there were actually lots of other talks that went on, but the diabetes treatment, pre-diabetes, and weight loss is like, turn the page, it's as strong, the evidence is as strong as it would be required for a drug approval at the US Food and Drug Administration. So there are enough studies done for the type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and weight loss that the government would say, yes, you've proven that it's safe and effective. So now there's no requirement for that to be done for a diet, and I have to say that it's the only diet now that has that much study behind it to be able to say that, which is pretty neat. Which in my lifetime, starting researching this 20 years ago, everyone thought you were going to die, for doing it for a day. And now, in fact, it might be that you could live longer doing this. So it's really come a long ways. So there's strong evidence not only for diabetes, pre-diabetes, and obesity, but also for epilepsy. If you've heard of the ketogenic diet for epilepsy, this is a time-honored treatment for childhood epilepsy. In fact, in Long Beach, just this weekend, I met Charlie of the Charlie Foundation. He's a young man who stimulated his parents to start the Charlie Foundation, which teaches a ketogenic diet for epilepsy. And Charlie's now a young man who doesn't have epilepsy anymore, And that story is fascinating. The treatment for epilepsy, though the keto diet is a little more, how should I say, you have to be more specific meal by meal for what to eat. And it's not the same if you're eating this way for other reasons, it's just general health. But I also met Jim Abrams and his wife, who started the Charlie Foundation, and they are a movie producer in, or he wrote, I forget if he was a producer or wrote the movie Airplane. Remember that movie? Everyone knows that movie. Yeah, Jim Abrams got up at the gala this weekend and said, you know, I know how to write jokes for teenage boys who like to joke about farting, you know, so. Well, it's a very interesting guy. He started the Charlie Foundation, which has been very influential for letting people know about that treatment for epilepsy. We've published studies on heartburn, or GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. Has anyone had heartburn go away because they started to eat this way? Yeah, I see about 15 hands. That's pretty reliable. It's almost as reliable as the weight loss that occurs for just about everyone. Don't really know why heartburn gets better, although when a study was done where pH probes were put, so there's like a little tube put in the stomach, the acidity goes down when you don't eat carbohydrates. So actually an easy way to explain it is that when you eat carbohydrates, your stomach acid goes up, and that's what gives you the heartburn. Irritable bowel syndrome, that's pretty cinchy, pretty 100%. The not inflammatory bowel disease, which is the more serious one, the irritable bowel syndrome, we published a paper on that, and also on polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a cause of infertility in women, and that gets better as well. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which has now become a common cause of a need for liver transplantation. It's kind of unbelievable that the carbohydrates that people eat cause the fatty liver to cause cirrhosis, and then you need a transplant. In fact, I saw a patient who had already had a transplant who was getting fatty liver in the transplant again that caused her to have the cirrhosis in the transplant in the first place, and said, well, we can fix this by cutting the carbs, and I didn't have the heart to say, and maybe you wouldn't have had a transplant in the first place. So this is a common misconception. Even doctors, most doctors get very little training in nutrition, so it's common that doctors wouldn't know. It's not the fat in the food that causes the fat in the liver, it's the carbohydrates in the food that cause the fat in the liver. And of course, the other thing, if you're a foodie, you know what foie gras is. Foie gras is fatty liver of a goose. And they make fatty liver by feeding the geese corn, starch, corn, not fat. So anyway, same in humans, you make fatty liver by eating carbs or sugar, not by eating fat. But if you can imagine stopping someone from having a liver transplant just by changing the food, that's pretty impressive. And so these are all the things that can happen in keto medicine, or using low-carb, high-fat diets, same general name for the approach that we use. There's a less common, but equally as devastating diseases called glycogen storage diseases. And there's one called McArdle disease, which is the most common one, where people have muscles that actually tire out. The classic thinking is, let's feed the muscles sugar. In fact, let's wake up children all night long and feed them sugar, so the muscle won't run out of sugar. World leaders, world experts, in fact, created resistant starches for these children to eat so that they could have sugar absorbing in their intestine all day long and all night long, but they still have the disease. The people with the disease started to do the keto diet because nothing else worked, and they got better. So I went to a meeting where there is a new society of the glycogen storage disease called the International Association for Muscle Glycogen Storage Disease, or IAM-GSD. I have GSD, glycogen storage disease. And the people who were studying this diet, the world experts got together in the same room. Now it was like a seminar, and the brilliance of Stacy Reason, who put together this conference, as she knew the world experts were going to say, well, you might have felt better with a glycogen storage disease by not eating carbs, but you know that high-fat diet's going to kill you, so we can't study it. And of course, this is the same rebuttal that I heard 20 years ago when we were starting to study this, is that, well, you might cause people to lose weight, but then they're going to die of heart disease and all that. So it was actually even worse. One of the scientists in the room said, well, I can't believe these case studies, these anecdotes, there's 30 of them, of people saying, I went from inability to climb up a mountain to be able to climb up a mountain. In fact, the researcher was so skeptical, he said they must have been misdiagnosed. They couldn't have had the disease because that disease never gets better. Of course, this is, take a blank and put in type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes never gets better because I don't see it get better, most doctors say, and yet we can actually put it in remission and cure type 2 diabetes. So it's an interesting kind of case of the grassroots people doing this themselves, congregating on a Facebook site, and then changing academic researchers. It's pretty cool. So that's McArdle's disease, this same process of changing the world through Facebook and then academia has happened for type 1 diabetes. In fact, I'm an author on a paper that was in the journal Pediatrics about these people with type 1 diabetes who did the keto diet on their own and had better blood glucose control on less insulin, and that's turning heads. In fact, it was the most cited paper in the journal Pediatrics in 2018. And again, it started with a survey, actually it was a GI fellow at Duke who surveyed a Facebook group, and then a Harvard researcher redid it with better methodology. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is this is a grassroots exchange. The leaders in the field, even the researchers, may be clueless about it, and let alone clinicians who may not know anything about it. So, traumatic brain injury, this is fascinating, and you can see as I'm going across to the right, the certainty is less. Okay, so on the left here, strong evidence means, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to get better, there's great research behind it, and then now we're going toward evolving evidence. Traumatic brain injury is very interesting, and of course, areas that have this in their common daily occurrence, like in football or rugby or in areas where there's combat and traumatic injuries to the brain, are starting to use and study the keto diet and actually giving ketones. You can actually drink them or eat them in various forms, and that science is very interesting to see that evolve. I wouldn't say it's ready for prime time use, not enough evidence behind it, but it's very fascinating to see.
Is that because the ketones feed the brain?
Is that because the ketones feed the brain? That's probably the simple explanation that, if you haven't really thought about this before, the brain is the organ, the brain can run on glucose as fuel. It can also run on ketones as fuel. And as we're learning more and more, it can actually take up fatty acids. And no one really has cared about studying this before, because everyone needs carbohydrates, and everyone needs carbohydrates, right? But so the brain actually can adapt to use ketones as a primary fuel source. And so when the organ is injured, just about every organ turns to ketones first. So when the heart is damaged, you put different energy sources in the water of the cell, for example. The damaged cells want ketones first, which is doesn't mean that they're going to be best or they're actually going to be therapeutic, but it's an interesting finding. So that it may be because the fuel source is easier to take into the brain. That's another way to look at it. You know, cancer, of course, is a big head turner, and it affects so many people. And if you go back to the early 1900s, Otto Warburg described that cancer was a sugar or a fermenting, burning sort of disease. And that if you just cut off the sugar supply, you could actually fix some cancers. Now, that had been forgotten for almost 100 years, like a lot of this information. This diet was used for diabetes and obesity 100 years ago, and then was forgotten. But so it's being rediscovered, and Tom Seyfried gave a great talk. There were several talks at the Metabolic Health Summit just this last weekend. And it turns out that fermenting or using sugar, you know how fermenting, like to make wine and beer, you use sugar and it gets fermented. So it's that same concept that cancers like the sugar, but they also like glutamine. And that was an interesting finding. I saw for the first time a presentation that Tom Seyfried did. He's in Boston, where if you gave a diet that didn't have sugar, didn't have glucose, and you stopped the glutamine from being absorbed, they were actually finding animals that did not die from the cancer that they were given. It's very early, it's on the far side of evolving evidence, but if that's true, that would be revolutionary in the treatment of cancer. So it's starving of cancer, if you will. There was a study, a case study, or a story of a father who, the son couldn't make it. The son usually gives the talks, but he has the son had a disease called glioblastoma multiforme. It's a very aggressive form of brain cancer, and the father gave a story of how they were told there were no treatments, but it turns out that Professor John Rowe, RHO, who gave a talk, was in the same town, and he went and said, hey, should we do this, radical thing like cut the carbs out? And he said, well, I don't know, but yeah, give it a try. So the father told the story of how the doctors treating his son wanted to send him in for protective services because they were not following the mainstream medical advice. However, the child is now alive without evidence of the cancer 4 years into the disease, which is unprecedented. So, in fact, then Tom Seyfried showed in his talk how the current treatments for this certain disease actually probably makes the disease worse. I was talking about this with Willie Yancey, my colleague here at Duke today, and he didn't understand what I was saying. He said, no, just imagine. So for us, it's diabetes, where doctors are into this, and they think their treatments are making people better when they're actually making them worse. And so before you go on insulin or on a treatment for diabetes that will never let you not have diabetes, because you'll always gain weight, and that's the root cause is the weight, you're basically locked into a treatment that you think is making people better, but it's actually making people worse. And to see that in the case of a different disease made it more obvious to me of what I'm dealing with within the diabetes world. So these doctors are well-intentioned and they think they're doing better. Of course, that's the optimistic or view that some don't have, or some are very, how should I say, skeptical of doctors and think they're just doing it for the money, or the radiation and chemo, but I can see how some doctors would get into this and think that they're doing good, and they're really not. So anyway, of all the cancers, the brain cancers seem to be the most strong signal at the moment, where this would be helpful in addition to other therapies or maybe even by itself. We don't really know. So that's fascinating to watch. Tom Seyfried has a book called The Metabolic Basis of Cancer, and that's a very solid scientific book. Then the neurologic cognitive impairment research is progressing. The dementia case studies, of course, if you haven't heard Mary Newport tell the story of giving coconut oil to her husband, and then ketones, and then ketogenic diet, and all that, it's a great story to hear. Dramatic improvements that sadly didn't last forever, but certainly gave him a few more years of life with memory. Other advances there in Parkinson's as well. You can give ketones in a liquid and temporarily stop a Parkinsonian tremor. So if you're not familiar with Parkinson's disease, it's a progressive disease where you might start with a tremor at rest. And so I've seen research where they're having someone drink ketones, and they're eating carbs, they drink the ketones, and the tremor goes away and then comes back. So something's happening. Now it's a long way to then use it as a therapy every day, but just the idea that you can use ketones and change something like that is pretty huge, pretty amazing. Alzheimer's disease has been called type 3 diabetes, meaning it's a sugar abnormality in blood sugar and having trouble getting in or not being used correctly. And if you look, the same trends in obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's have all been increasing at the same time as the epidemics coincide with the change in the diet that we've had. And I've seen innumerable talks where just the correlation of obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's go all together. Had an interesting conversation with a corporate leader. If this might give you some ammunition, if you're ever talking to someone who's skeptical, he went into a group of doctors, was trying to get them to do some research, and the doctors were, kind of giving him a hard time. They weren't really convinced, and so he kind of said, well, let me just go over the current state of things. So obesity is at an all-time high. It's going up like this. Type 2 diabetes is going like this. And you're in charge of that, and you're supposed to fix that. What would that, so let's say I'm the CEO of your company, and here's your scorecard. What would you do? And one of the doctors, well, you fire me. So remember, the context is that things are not getting better with the current state of things. And I rarely use that much of a arm twisting, if you will, but and I've been pretty subtle in terms of, here, look at the data, or, isn't this great? But the potential impact is enormous. You just, not only diabetes and obesity, but look at the other research going on in terms of the keto diet. Isn't that pretty amazing? Next month, we're going to, at the support group, we like to bring in speakers, and I guess I filled in tonight because we didn't have one. It was about time for me to do it. But next month, we're going to have Amy Berger speak. She's the author of the Alzheimer's Antidote. Has anyone read that book? A few folks? Yeah, it's a must-read. Oh, in fact, Amy's here tonight. Stand up, Amy. Stand up. It was fun to see you, Amy, at the Metabolic Health Summit being mobbed by people saying, oh, Amy Berger, you wrote the book. How comes that?
I wasn't as mobbed as much as Eric Westman.
You were as mobbed as much as me. In fact, anyway, these conferences are great. I know it's like you're in your own echo chamber bubble, but it's a growing echo chamber and bubble, and there were, I think, about 800 people at this meeting, mostly healthcare folks of all of the keto conferences, this Metabolic Health Summit is the most scientific one. You get CME credit, continuing medical education credit. Then there are all sorts of other keto conferences around the country that are kind of like this, where you get a mixture of consumers and medical people. But I just wonder how many of you are in the health field? Raise your hand. Yeah, so
Everybody.
everybody. Yeah. Good. So I just want to end up with an exciting opportunity and development. Last fall, the HEAL Clinic, so we created the HEAL Clinics to allow availability for this information at a distance if you don't have a medical problem, so partnering and coaching and that sort of thing. And then if you do have a health problem, you're on medication, you get access to doctors and health practitioners who understand how to take you off the medicines safely. And that's the big concern we have as so many people are going keto. And that if you don't understand medicines and the diet and how powerful it can be, we need to reduce insulin immediately if you start changing the food like we ask people to do. So HEAL Clinics has providers who understand how to, it's called de-prescribing medication. And so there's a non-medical component and a medical component. You just go to the website and put in your information at the initial health assessment, and you go from there. I'm just looking at data over the last year, and just like I would expect in the Duke Clinic, if people are doing it, they get support, you get phenomenal results with the HEAL Clinics as well. And so last fall, as a fundraising investment opportunity, we started what's called an online public offering, or OPO. It's not an IPO if you're in the business world. That's when you're on Wall Street and you're like millions and gazillions of dollars. This is a much lower amount, and then also it's an opportunity for the grassroots to change the future. So most people who are investing in the HEAL Clinic say, you know, this has worked for me, and I don't want other people to have to go through all of the searching that I had to go through. And so having this available and to invest in the clinics through this online public offering, it's not giving your money away, you're buying stock in the company. So, you know, of course we would love that one day, like maybe this was buying IBM stock, or you know, didn't you wish you had bought some, anyway. We hope it'll have that. Of course, you risk just giving it away and the company failing and all that. And it's all in the fine print at the website. I'll do my darndest to not have that happen. So check out the healclinics.com/offering. And so back in the pre-Christmas, we started, and you can see there were 39 investors, and each one gave almost $1,000, so there were $37,000 with a minimum investment of $480. And of course, I've invested using this, and you can actually put it on your credit card. I was kind of amazed with that, but how else would you transfer the money? And so I'm happy to report that as of today, we are at $622,000. So, thank you to all of you who invested in the HEAL Clinics. There's 574 investors. I know a bunch in this room, and 624,000, which if you're in business, it's a good start, right?
What are you going to do after 48 days?
So what do we do after 48 days? Well, so there are all these rules and regulations for, this is actually approved through the SEC, U.S. So Securities Exchange Commission. This is why I have a whole business team to do this, because I don't understand all of this. So after the online public offering ends, and that means we go to work. Oh, you mean with the offering, what happens? You can invest in the clinics outside the online public offering. In fact, if you wanted to invest now above the $2,000 limit at HEAL Clinics, you could do that. You just email me directly at HEAL Clinics.
What are you going to do with it? What's the goal?
So the goal is $1 million. That's the maximum that you can raise. And what this does is invests in the creation and support of the non-medical program that teaches people at a distance, and also establishing clinics where people can be helped off the medication that is called de-prescribing. So it's that using that therapy and putting it in more widespread availability. So, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, the detail of the business model is all in here. It's a host clinic model where you don't actually rent or own the building, for example, because that's very a lot of overhead if you do that. So a clinic within a clinic model, a lot of practitioners like physical therapists will rent space in an internist office and do practice in that office because that office wants their patients to have that service. And so that's what we do. We find, for the clinic side, we find doctors who want this for their patients but realize they can't do it themselves. So we rent space inside the doctor's office.
Is there any local here already, or?
Are there any local clinics? Yes,
Yes.
I run the Durham Field Clinic. In fact, I'm there on Mondays. And then there's a clinic that just opened in Pinehurst, and there's a clinic in Chesapeake, Virginia.
So if somebody has diabetes and they need help with the medication tapering, this is where they would go for that?
Yeah, if someone has diabetes and they need help with medication tapering, what we call that de-prescribing,
Right.
medication tapering safety,
Yeah.
then the HEAL clinics is where it's like the only place that I know where you can be certain we know
Right.
what to do.
So that's available in Durham now?
And that's available in Durham
Okay.
now. Yeah. The non-medical treatment is available anywhere. So what happens is you go to the website, fill in the questionnaire, and it's reviewed. And if you don't have a medical problem that needs the monitoring, then we can teach you at a distance. The current teaching is a handbook that is a version of page 4. Has anyone heard of page 4? Wow, everybody. It's actually now 16, 17, and 18 in this handbook. And then also a video link where I'm reading through the handbook and giving pointers along the way. So it has that step-by-step instruction as well.
Does the insurance cover that kind of thing? Blue Cross?
Does insurance cover it? Not yet.
Okay.
Well, should I say we don't file insurance for you, but we give you a bill. It's called a super bill or a receipt that a lot of people will file for their insurance and get some reimbursement for it. Or if you have a health savings account where you put aside money, you could use it for something like that. But we don't file insurance for you. Just as a startup,
Right.
it's really
Too
difficult
involved.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Does someone have to be referred to the clinic, or how do they find out?
Yeah, does someone need to be referred to the clinic? No, it's a simple, you go to this website, healclinics.com, and you fill in the initial health assessment. That's how you refer yourself. Actually, you have to sign up yourself for it, yeah. Which is an interesting, you're going to get people who are more motivated, perhaps, to make the change. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are you working at training doctors, more doctors?
Yeah. Are we training more doctors? Absolutely. So, when I step back, the HEAL Clinics is basically creating jobs and training for doctors and physician assistants and nurse practitioners, and even that's at the clinical side. The partner side, where we're teaching the non-medical side, are really, the partners can be of all different backgrounds. You might be a dietitian or a nutritionist, or you might just be someone who's used the diet successfully and wants to teach other people. And Jackie Everson is the other teacher, trainer on my team. Jackie worked with Dr. Atkins for 30 years, so I have probably we have the most experienced team using keto diets that's available anywhere. But yeah, the whole idea is to train internally in our own company, train as many doctors and partners as we can, the medical and non-medical. Yeah.
Do you ever use alternative health practitioners?
Do we ever use alternative health practitioners? Well, that's something that state by state, there are different rules and regulations. We have more flexibility if we're having the non-medical partners being trained, but if you're actually seeing someone and adjusting medication and doing that sort of care, then it has to be whatever the state will allow. So that kind of depends on what the degree is. Right? Yes.
Actually, this question goes back to your talk on the other
Yeah.
medical issues, and that was at what point, if things are being helpful, you're getting evidence, do people have to go full keto to get those benefits, or is it kind of general thing from low carb to maybe just reduced carbs to also get some benefit?
Yeah, so the question is, in doing this kind of treatment, do you have to use the ketogenic approach or not, or use low carb? And what I've learned is that if someone wants it to work the first time, then you just use the keto approach. If you're teaching someone who, it doesn't matter if it works for a while. Have you ever had anyone come to you with that mindset? People want it to work now, the first time, and so that's why we use the keto 20-gram total carb or less approach, and then go from there.
I'm just thinking in terms of like weaning somebody onto the diet.
Yeah, so weaning someone off the carb, well, having been in the behavioral smoking cessation world, that's the world I was in the research setting before this, the time-honored way to get someone to quit smoking is cold turkey with patch or pills or something. So this is similar. It's a cold turkey cessation, or let me put it another way, it's like taking the Band-Aid off really fast. Or you could go really slow, right? So that's kind of a clinical decision we made, knowing now what we know, that this is safe and useful and more effective the lower you go on the carbs. So the dosing is, the lower you go on the carbs, the stronger it is. So, and even a change from 30 grams to 20 grams can make a big effect. And I know you may not believe that, but that's what I see. So, great. I wonder, Amy, you want to come down and give a promo for next month? And then I'd like to, see who you are, what's going on, anyone new want to introduce themselves?
Thank you. I just wanted to say a few more words about that Metabolic Health Summit. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so we were at this event just this past weekend in LA, and it really featured, I missed the first few minutes of your talk, so I don't know how much of it covered, but really featured some of the world's leading experts in all the different uses of the ketogenic diet, like Dr. Westmans was showing, not just the ones we know about diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, PCOS, but all these new and emerging areas, Alzheimer's disease, autism, epilepsy is the most well-known of the ketogenic diet, but cancer, all these emerging research areas. And to me, the best, most reaffirming, most encouraging thing about that whole event, at events like it, is that you have MDs and PhDs up there presenting. It's all well and good when, some weekend warrior with a blog just writes a blog post like, my dad cured his blah, blah, blah with keto, or my sister's friend's roommate's cousin, her disease went away on keto. Like, okay, great. We call that an anecdote, it's just somebody's story. And when you start to collect enough of those stories, it's like, oh, maybe there's something here, maybe we should look at this. But when you have PhDs and MDs and people who've made their careers out of researching this, stand up in front of the room at the podium and talk to you, and not just like making stuff up, but showing you that the cellular mechanisms and the biochemical pathways, it's so fascinating because when, where do I start? I heard a quote. So when you look at all those things, Dr. Westman had that slide with, going from left to right with very, very solid evidence going to lesser and lesser levels of evidence where we think the ketogenic diet could be helpful. I mean, this is a slam dunk. Like type 2 diabetes, PCOS, fatty liver, obesity, metabolic syndrome. I mean, you don't even think twice. Like, why would you ever do anything else to treat those issues? So less and less evidence as we go to the right. So there's so many things that affect so many different parts of the body that this way of eating is effective for. That I once heard Dr. Westman say, but I don't know if you made this up or you were quoting another doctor. He said, "It's so unbelievable you won't believe it." Except I do believe it, because when you know the science, you can't not believe it. It's like opening Pandora's box. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when I was very lucky, so I have a master's degree in nutrition, and people often ask me, was it hard? Like, was it hard to unlearn everything you had to learn in school? Like, when you learned keto, when you went low carb yourself, did you have to, like, deprogram yourself? No, I was lucky because I went to school for nutrition after I was already eating low carb for over 5 years. I was a career changer. I was able to learn about this way of eating in the context of low carb and keto. So when I learned the biochemistry, when I learned the anatomy and physiology, I'm sitting there at my desk thinking, no wonder this works. No wonder low carb does what it does. Look at the cell, look at the mitochondria, oh my God. So when you see these scientists talking about these things, they're not making it up. There's legitimate science behind this. And even for the ones where we're not sure, where the research is just emerging, like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, cancer, the mechanisms are there. Like when you look at how the human body works, when you look at how the cells work, and how a ketogenic way of eating fundamentally alters all of that wholesale, you say to yourself, that should work. There's no reason keto shouldn't work for insert disease condition. We might not have enough data yet. We might not have enough case studies yet to prove that it does. But it's one of those things where, like, wow, this looks great on paper. Now let's bring this into rats and mice and dogs and humans and see if it actually does work the way we think it should. But I'm blabbing. I just meant to say that, like, literally for me, the best thing about that event is that it's not snake oil. This way of eating, we have a lot of detractors, we have a lot of critics, we have a lot of people saying, you're over-promising, there's no way a diet could do all that, but guess what? It does. And I mean, there's legitimate science, and it's so encouraging when you have people and children affected by these debilitating diseases that we don't know why they happen. But the beautiful thing is we don't have to know 100% why they happen. We've been researching type 2 diabetes for like 200 years. We still don't know exactly why it happens. We don't have to know why to know how to fix it. So hopefully the same will be true. We still don't know what causes cancer. We don't know. A million different things. But we don't have to know to maybe have at least some kind of beneficial impact. So I'm sure we will be bringing you more and more of the research over the years as it emerges. And I'll see you next month.
So next month, I think you're going to talk about keto and mental health is the topic, not just Alzheimer's, but other mental health areas as well. That reminded me of one of the talks was the Keto Pet Sanctuary. Keto Pet Sanctuary. Keto Pet Sanctuary. Have you heard of this? No. So it's hard to do human research, right? So one of the foundations that supports a lot of this area, and it's interesting to see that you have to have companies in order to fund research in this area, and companies then make foundations. The Keto Pet Sanctuary is a place where you can have your dog treated for cancer. And so imagine the talk we saw by one of the veterinarians at the Keto Pet Sanctuary, and they put them in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber with a ketogenic diet. So you get these little cute pictures of the dog in the little chamber, and their clinical stories, and they are curing some cancers. Not every dog gets cured with other cancers, but just to be able to use a combination that we think is going to be helpful in humans. It's helpful in mice for cancer treatment to do the ketogenic diet with hyperbaric oxygen, and to try to use that in other sorts of animals. It was anyway, that was one of the endearing talks. Also, the father of the son with glioblastoma. These conferences are interesting because, as someone commented to me out in the hallway, it was the first time they've been to a conference like this, and they'd never been to a conference where there were doctors and scientists talking about it and people who were fixed by the treatment. And I thought about that. Yeah, hold on. Because usually it's just doctors, talking about drugs or whatever treatments. Where are the people who are getting better? Okay, they're back in their offices, or they're not around anymore, they're dead. Yeah, right. Depending on what disease we're talking about. But so someone just remarked it. They'd never been to a conference where there would be someone who got up and was the manifestation of exactly what that other doctor was saying at that conference. So that was pretty neat to hear that. And it's a unique part of this field where you can do so much, even beyond diabetes and obesity. So, who's here for the first time and wants to say hello? And if you have the gumption to come on up, and it is Facebook Live, so it does have some permanency, I guess, but you can also just stand up and say something. First timers, you want to say hello? Introduce yourself. Yes, please.
I'm a first timer.
Or come on down.
Come on down. All right.
Let's make it even. Have you be right on you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Quanta Monique Edwards, and I have only been on keto 2 months. That's it. And I just like the way I feel on it, so I'm enjoying it. I do hope that you will train someone, because I'm your May appointment, and I made that appointment in October. So I'm hoping to get into swing, but I'll be waiting. That's okay, I'm waiting. And I was invited here by my good friend, Mrs. Henrietta Corsi. She had been on the keto, and I really liked her results. And then a lady that I saw during the election has lost a significant amount of weight. This is the second time I'm seeing her. So I'm a believer because I've actually seen people where the results are working. Let's see. So I went on keto because I actually run a lot of marathons, half marathons, excuse me.
Speak up,
Speak up, sure. So, so I decided to go to keto because I run a lot of half marathons. I was a runner in middle school, high school, and in college. And when I went into the doctor one day, I was like 1 point into pre-diabetes. And so for whatever reason, I couldn't lose any weight, even with me training for the marathon. So this is why I went on this, because I wanted to just try something completely different. And so far it's been pretty good. If nothing else, I feel better. I've decided not to weigh myself at all the first 4 or 5 months, just so that mentally I'm not getting into this mindset of dropping weight. I just want to feel better. So.
How did you learn about that? What resources?
Miss Henrietta, that's the person who introduced it to me, and she gave me page 4. So, because I was telling her about what my struggles were, because I had been trying to lose weight with, a physician, and they were giving me some medicine, but my blood sugar was dropping so low at night that I was vomiting. And so after about 120 days, I just told them, look, I think I gave it a good run. I can't do this particular thing any longer. And so, yeah, that's just a friend. Like I said, Miss Henrietta. So, this was really informational. It's good to be able to actually see you before I actually see you in the office.
You don't need me anymore.
No, I still need to come in because my doctor who referred me is making sure that I go to see you. So. But yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's a common story of thinking exercise, with exercise you can outrun a bad diet. You can't outrun a bad diet. And many people come thinking that exercise is going to fix them, they're frustrated, and really food's more important. So the initial program that I teach, and I'm waiting for someone else new to come up. The initial program that I teach is really just all diet change. You don't have to exercise. It's okay if you do. There's a whole other sidebar. Maybe we'll get an athlete to come and talk about how you run on a keto diet. It's actually fine to do. So, come on up there. And make sure it's just really close so you can hear yourself.
My name is Janet, and I am a patient of Dr. Westmans. I started seeing him in October. I was referred to him by my doctor here at Duke because I am a breast cancer patient, and I need to get the weight off. And so she referred me to Dr. Westman, and literally the day after I saw him, I was re-diagnosed. I went through major surgery, I went through the holidays, and I still have lost 21 pounds so far. And the doctors at Duke are amazed, after my journey so far with cancer, that I healed from this major surgery as fast as I did. It was not an easy surgery, and I was moving about within a couple weeks, and they were very impressed with that. The difference in my life was keto. When you get home from surgery, what does everybody do? They want to cook for you. And I said to them, sugar does not walk through my front door. Don't even bring it. I almost put a sign on the front door saying, don't bring it in. And a lot of people were like, well, what does she eat? And I said, well, let me tell you what I can't eat. And they adjusted, and it was wonderful. Really what I wanted to come up and say is, Miss Amy, I would like to be at one of those conferences one day and say, keto helped me with cancer. That's really what I would like to do someday. Thank you.
Well, I'm new and I'm blessed because I'm healthy, thank God. But I moved here in June and gained 25, 30 pounds from June. And I knew I had to do something because my mother had diabetes. My mother had diabetes, and she had both legs amputated before she died. So I know that I have to get on this stick and lose the weight that I've gained. And I started right after Christmas and lost 14 pounds. So I'm happy with it, and I heard about ketos from two friends who are probably watching. Her name is Terry, and her daughter's name is Jamie, and they got me on this, so I thank them.
Any questions?
Hello.
Anything we can help you with tonight?
I know you can't have nuts. I think I read something about you can't have nuts, but when I get hungry at 9 o'clock at night, I love to drink a cup of almond milk, unsweetened almond milk, and that helps curb my appetite, and I get to sleep then. So I guess that's okay, I don't know.
How many grams of carbs in the unsweetened almond milk?
I think 1.
There's your question, or there's your answer.
1.
Can you stay under 20 for the day?
Yes,
Having that
I've been staying under 20.
Same with the nuts. If at first we teach no nuts because it's a trigger food for so many people, but if you can keep it very low, I know everyone's like listed.
I know.
So my strategy with nuts is to give you success at first, which means no nuts, and then depending on the person, talking about it later on, especially if you miss something crunchy or you need a snack. But it's all a matter of the number of grams of carbohydrates. And it's very easy to go over the 20-gram limit with a tub of nuts. Right? One strategy is to take one of these 100-calorie packs or put it in Ziploc bags so you're not, you don't have license to, face plant in the container. Yeah, well, we all love them. So anyway, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay.
just want to lose weight. I know as short as I am, I weigh too much. So I'm going to work on this. And hopefully I get to see you in September. One question. Can I have page 4?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, the only thing is, so I worry about you having page 4 if you're on medications that might become too strong. Yeah, okay, excellent. There's a little secret. If you, I know it's in the microphone, if you have an appointment at the Duke Clinic, you can call on a Monday to see if there's a cancellation that week, and you might get in the next day.
Okay.
But this is a secret only you can know. So one reason that we created the HEAL clinics is that you wouldn't have to wait that waiting at Duke, and I think there's probably an appointment in 2 weeks for the HEAL clinics if you wanted to come in. The major difference is that it is out of pocket, not covered by insurance for the HEAL clinics. But we also offer better support, different support, more support. Then there's that old saying, you get what you pay for. So I'm just joking. The Duke clinic's fine, but the Duke clinic's basically Roy and myself, and we don't have the same level of psychological support as we do with the HEAL clinics. So, yes?
Can I just yell from here?
Sure.
Okay, so my friend brought me here tonight, and I have actually filled out the online application. It takes about 3 to 5 days for them to get back to you, I guess. But the ripping the Band-Aid, as you mentioned, it's just going to be self-discipline to be under 20.
Well, it's not self-discipline.
Well, what am I
You're
doing?
just not
Okay, I
hungry.
think of sugar as an addiction. You have to understand. So.
Why don't you come down here?
Oh.
This is a longer answer, I guess. Who in the room is a sugar addict?
Okay. So my name is Peggy, and I'm addicted to sugar. I feel like we're in a support group. So I guess what I wondered is if you started tomorrow and you were under 20 grams of carbohydrates, I could do it. How long would it take until that wasn't so hard?
Yeah, so can we do a survey? What I say is that it takes a day or 2 for the cravings to go away. That's not long. But of all the people who've done this, how many would say the major withdrawals and all were gone in a day? Raise your hand. No. How about in 2 days? Raise your hand. How about in 3 days? Raise your hand. Maybe I should change what I said. A week.
4 days.
A month. So you can see it's kind of a bell-shaped curve around 2. So, right, what I saw was their hands at 1, more at 2, 3, then kind of like that.
Right.
And
you won't even think about sugar after about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, you don't think about sugar.
I drank 7 Cokes a day, and 4 days I didn't.
Come on up here and tell this is it.
Hi, my name is.
There are some.
It is like a support group, right?
There are some 12-step programs that apply to food and sugar. We're not one of them, but they do exist. Which 12-step meaning that it is the addiction model, like for alcoholism. And what was it? You drank how many Cokes?
7 a day. I was a mailman, and I'd stop a reward if I finished this apartment complex. I'd stop and give me a nab and a drink, Coke. And all day long I drank sodas. When I got home, I drank a couple. My wife couldn't believe it that after 4 days, I didn't drink any more Cokes. And I drank lemon. It's like a little lemon packet in my water is what I drink. No sugar. But and it's like 4 days. And you don't even think about it. Now, if you see brownies or your wife's cooking chunks of cookies, put them in front of you, you feel like I have one of those. It's tough. You really have to eliminate all that stuff. But after a while, you really don't crave it. You really won't.
Isn't he believable?
If you eat, and the more fat you eat, it satiates you. You're not hungry on this diet. At lunch, I skip lunch.
I have heard that.
I do some of the intermittent fasting type things. So I've done a 3-day water fast after about 2 weeks just to see if I could do it. No problem. And I could probably went a little longer. My wife like, I want to fix dinner. What can you so she's fixing me dinner. But if you do a little bit of fasting, maybe eat in a 4-hour window or a 6-hour window, wait 2 weeks or so. But you will augment what you're trying to do with this keto with some of the fasting. And
Is that on a page? Like not page 4? No, I mean intermittent. Is there a part for intermittent fasting? Because I know that was a question of my friends. Let's bring her in. Let's make her come up here.
So we teach not the word or term intermittent fasting. We teach eat when you're hungry.
Eat when you're hungry, yeah.
Okay.
Stop when you're full. Drink when you're thirsty.
A lot of people eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner as a habit.
So if you're in the
not
habit
hungry.
of having breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
If you're not hungry, don't
you realize you're not hungry, it's okay to not eat breakfast or lunch and just have dinner, which is, some people call intermittent fasting. Now, I don't like the idea of you just eating once a day if you're hungry all day, saying, I'm intermittent fasting, and this is terrible. And no, that's not the way it should be. It should be that the hunger's gone, you just naturally eat less, and that's fine.
And I do think when you're off of that sugar roller coaster, then, like what you're talking about, then you're not hungry all the time. Because I had that similar, one of the questions on the application online is about previous diet experience. And that was something that happened years ago when I did like the South Beach diet, which is a lot of fats, healthy fats somewhat, I guess. So anyway, that part I did feel like I could go a lot longer without eating because I wasn't hungry.
That's gonna happen even better with this approach. But I just have to ask you, does it hurt when you take the Band-Aid off? For you personally?
I'm probably a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person.
No, but does it hurt?
No, I mean for a second.
Yeah, I need a different analogy,
I'm
because it
sorry.
doesn't hurt.
I'm not answering it right.
No, that's right. No, but
Okay.
so...
No, it doesn't hurt.
No, that's why I want to make it easier, don't worry about having to take a Band-Aid off. The analogy was...
It's really not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do want my friend to stand up in the back.
Sure.
She, I wanted her to come down here, but anyway, she was telling me that she had been eating low carb for like 2 years. Not that she really needed to lose weight, because she looks great, but she did this with the intermittent fasting and lost 6 pounds in 2 weeks. All of a sudden. Where'd she go? Now tell me. Well, I'm going.
Well, and what I love and is, you know, the good fats, but I am trying to eat in the 8 to 10 hour window and stick to the keto, you know, diet. Lots of veggies, fresh veggies, but I avoid, you know, like I made artichoke dip for Super Bowl, but I brought celery and radishes and, you know, and everyone was scarfing it down. I did have Fritos for the kids, just, you know, but some.
Pork rinds?
I love pork rinds. I'll use pork rinds with pimento cheese.
But not on the Super Bowl?
Well, no, I forgot. That's a good idea. But anyway, yeah, I did. And I am post-menopausal, so, you know, I'm 50, and so once I hit a certain point, everything I ate, sugar, carbs, everything went onto my body differently. And for a couple of years, I've been trying to lose probably, you know, 5 to 10 pounds, and this is the only thing that's actually done it, and very easy, and I'm very satisfied. But I do have a question about the bulletproof coffee, because I was drinking that with butter in it, and it was very, very yummy. But I wasn't really losing the weight, so then I finally went to straight black coffee until about noon. So I'll eat and have wine. I still have my wine, I have to say, until about 9 p.m., then no more calories. And then the next day I'll have black coffee, and I'm fine. I enjoy it. I can taste it. I can taste the flavors, you know, I don't even put cream in it. And then about noon, I'll have my lunch. And then, again, I'm not craving or missing anything, because I still get my wine.
You know where bulletproof coffee came from?
No, where? Paleo?
Yeah.
Right?
What's in bulletproof coffee?
Well, I was doing it with spot coffee, and then you can add either butter, or butter and coconut oil, or just coconut oil.
The coffee.
Yeah, so why might that stop your weight loss?
It's fat.
It should. It's not enough to. Oh, calories.
That's thank you. The other, so please, thank you. The history of low-carb keto diets for weight loss goes way back, 1863. Bulletproof coffee, I don't know the exact date. Someone can Google it. It was probably 2010. An entrepreneur named Dave Asprey saw a way to make $1 gazillion, and he has. And he has no idea about weight loss and the idea of adding oils and butter to ramp up your ketone levels is a good one. However, if you're trying to lose body fat and you drink fat, and you're not going to be burning your body fat as much. So the caloric level makes it, the bulletproof coffee makes it stall people who are trying to lose weight, or it can work if you just limit the amount to a small amount of the butter, coconut oil, that sort of thing. So yeah, be careful with these new, people call them biohacks, or have this, keto that, and our approach is the time-honored, low-carb, high-fat, keto, using real foods, black coffee. I actually migrated more towards the flavored coffees that have no carbs in them, so you get a little sweetness and then a little cream in it. I'm experimenting a little bit with the coconut oil and MCT and some coffee shots, but I don't see that adds any value for weight loss. Now, if you're trying to modulate the ketone levels for Alzheimer's or cancer or something like that, you're not trying to lose weight, that's where those things, it seems to me, can come and be useful. But if you're trying to lose weight, don't drink oils and fats much. And on page 4, there is a strict limitation to cream, butter and oils, mayonnaise. So, because those are high-calorie items. Anyone else want to come back? Yeah. Oh, question? Sure.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I have to drink coffee with cream in it, but I don't want to drink normal cream. So what is the best thing to lose weight? What kind of cream, or what can I put in my coffee?
Okay, so let's talk about coffee a little bit, or tea, or what you put in it. It really boils down to the number of grams of carbohydrates. So when you look at, unless you really have a difficult metabolism, the heavy cream, the light cream, the half and half, they're all about the same when you look at the carbohydrate content. But you want to be strictly limiting to about 2 tablespoons of creams and oils for the day. And so that means you have to be careful with the amount. On a low-fat diet, low-calorie diet that you may have done in the past, the reason fats and oils and creams are so strictly limited is it's easy to get away with a lot of calories with a small amount. So the creamers and all, you just look at the grams of carbohydrates. Usually it's a gram per creamer, and some people get upset because, oh my gosh, you're eating something fake. Well, sometimes there's nothing else available. The bigger picture view is to just keep the carbs really low. And so look at the amount of carbs and the serving size of any of those things. So I don't know that there's one right answer, which is better, heavy cream or half and half. It's probably the one that tastes better for you.
I have to tell you something. I watched that video of you going through the grocery store.
The grocery store video, you like that one?
I loved that. That was a hoot.
Thank you. You like that video I did going through the grocery store where I said, nope, can't have this one, can't have it. Yeah, or this is good. I should probably redo that one, although maybe not. It's funny, with the internet, I did that a long time ago. And yet if you're coming to this right now, you think I just did it yesterday. Well, maybe not. Lost a little hair since then. But that's a fact. Just as a thank you for the feedback. it is important that doctors understand food. And it's uncommon, I know, but it really matters what we eat. I think the question, or you want to come on down?
Yes, mine's kind of unusual. I am an alternative healthcare provider, and I work with clients all over the country by phone. But this is my first real exposure to keto. Where can I understand the mechanism? Because I might be able to help some of my clients with some of their own problems. And I'm also gluten intolerant, so it's been interesting to watch it to see from that standpoint. But I just want to know more about what the actual mechanism is, how it actually works.
Great question, and how big a book do you want? Seriously, as more and more is known about this, there's a very practical textbook that I edited with Mike Steelman. It's called Obesity, Evaluation and Treatment Essentials. And in there are several chapters on using a keto diet and the therapeutic use of it. We published 2 papers this last year, so Westmans et al. 2018 on the use of the keto diet for obesity and the use of the keto diet for diabetes.
What does keto stand for? What does it mean?
So keto, K-E-T-O, is a short version of ketogenic or ketone. So you're basically, when you're not eating carbohydrates, your body uses fatty acids and ketones instead of the glucose. In most cells, ketones can be used instead of glucose. So historically, the ketogenic diet was this reserved term for epilepsy, but it's being used now for other conditions that you see. The diabetes articles in Science came under the term carbohydrate restriction as a more technical term, and LCHF, low carb, high fat, is a popular term for the keto diet for diabetes and obesity. That was popularized by dietdoctor.com and the Swedish group that has been promoting the low carb and informing people about low carb diets. So I guess for teaching and understanding mechanisms, one of the best user-friendly consumer sources is dietdoctor.com. That's Andreas Ienfeldt in Sweden, who is the owner of dietdoctor.com. Other sources of mechanism, I mean, I would refer you to PubMed and search. PubMed is the national database for the National Library of Medicine. It's open to any consumer. You can pull it up here, and you search, I don't know how many minutes. You can search Feynman, F-E-I-N-M-A-N, R-D, Richard, and he's got the mechanisms in biochemistry, in spades, in actual research articles. There's also another book that was published in 2000, I know, it's boring, most of it, in 2017, called Ketogenic Therapies, edited by Susan Masino, F-M-A-N-M-A-S-I-N-O, which is a very dense scientific book, which, now, a lot of people want to know how we got into this problem in the first place. And so I really like Nina Teicholz's book, The Big Fat Surprise. Has anyone read that book? Or Gary Taub's Good Calories, Bad Calories, for those who are really geeky and scientific minded. And those basically tell the story of how there was never any science to support the low fat diet. They don't get into ketogenic therapies too much, but it's more, I find I have to teach people why what they learned is not correct or entirely true, and as much as I need to teach people about how to do it. Yeah, and when people come back, the barriers is people out there tell people not to do it. I need to teach people that actually know what we were all taught isn't based in science. Yeah.
I just learned on Facebook, on the Adapt Your Life, I think, group, The Magic Pill.
Yes.
A documentary
That's
from
great.
Australia in 2017. It's a feature-length film, an hour and a half, and it It just covers it all.
Yeah, a very accessible documentary about the ketogenic diet or low carb diet. It's called The Magic Pill. Has anyone seen The Magic Pill?
Oh, yeah.
Just about everyone.
Yeah, keto.
Yeah, so when you get into the documentary films, The Magic Pill has a kind of an overview of all the different things that the ketogenic or low carb, high fat diet can do.
Well, and it also explains how we got on this low fat kick back in '61.
Yeah.
Congress caused the epidemic of obesity.
Congress people, you know.
Yeah, so please see The Magic Pill. We actually hosted a viewing at the South Point Mall last summer, funded by the Nutrition Coalition. There was a public viewing. Christy, I think, came, Christy Sullivan. Yeah, The Magic Pill is great. Now, when you get into exercise, serial killers, C-E-R-E-A-L, not S-E-R-I-A-L. Yeah, so Donald O'Neill is sitting in a coffin with cornflakes around him as the video cover. And so serial killers, and then serial killers 2. And serial killers 2, they train, Steve Finney, one of my teachers, trains Sami Inkiman and his wife, who are Ironman level athletes, to row in a rowboat from San Francisco to Hawaii, running on fat, basically. And it's an amazing story. I wouldn't recommend it. It took them 60 days or something.
45. The record before they did it that year was 60. They did it in 45.
So they broke the record of 60 by 15 days.
15 days.
And one of the most remarkable things that in that movie dramatized, so they're rowing 16 hours a day in a rowboat. It's a freestanding rowboat, and they packed all their food in there, and they had a little divorce-o-meter, you know, because they were together for 45 days in this little boat. And what was most remarkable is that they didn't have to rest their muscles. And this is something that if you ever want to do extreme sports, there's a race where you run for 100 miles. You see how long it takes you. Yeah, who would do this? Well, Zach Bitter, ZachBitter.com, I've seen him speak several times, is a keto enthusiast, and he has the world record in the 100-mile race. And he basically runs on fat during that race. So don't worry about it. Now, if you are transitioning, you may want to give yourself a break for a week or two in order to give transition to fat burning. In fact, now that there's science being wrapped around this, not just individual stories, we know that it really takes about 6 months to fully keto adapt if you're going to do something high level like that. So don't just, start running a marathon, half marathon tomorrow after changing the food for a day. You want to give time for your body to get used to running on fat instead of sugar. Come on down. Yeah. But yeah, serial killers 2, The Magic Pill.
What about Keto Clarity?
Keto Clarity.
In your name on
Jimmy
it?
Moore and I wrote, or he wrote and I helped.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello.
How are you?
Great.
Okay, so my name is
Bring this
Yvette.
up, please. Yeah.
My name is Yvette Jones, and when you started talking about the running and everything, I am a runner, and one of my problems is right now, and I've been
Microphone
doing,
closer.
I'm sorry, I've been doing the keto for about a month now, and so now I have legs, so it's hard to actually run, so I'm transitioning, trying to fat adapt, I guess. But what can I do to help? Because right now my performance is not where I want it to be.
So, a little pointer. Have we done?
No, we have not.
Have you done page 4?
Maybe I have,
No,
but I was
wait.
actually introduced to this by my friend Kevin.
Okay. Well, but this is all just the way to drill down to, so in 1 minute, tell me what you're eating, drinking, you get up, breakfast, lunch.
Okay, so when I get up in the morning, I will have eggs, sausage, water. Lunch might be a salad with some type of meat. Dinner, sometimes, not always, might be green beans, broccoli, some type of meat. I'm really staying away from carbs, staying away from sugar.
Other drinks?
Water. Only water.
Do you add salt?
No. Now, I do have the new, I'm using the new one. It's a tablet, electrolyte, no sugar. I think it's like 2 grams of carbs.
Do you measure ketones in any way?
I use the keto sticks. I do make sure that I remain in ketosis.
So we've done this before in the audience who knows about carb. Would you say that's a keto level eating?
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you hungry?
No,
Are you losing weight?
I am.
So what's the problem?
So
Too much
hang on.
too much.
The problem is lead legs during exercise.
Yes.
So, and how long have you been eating without carbohydrates?
1 month.
1 month. And at first, was there any difficulty running?
Not at first, but I guess as my body got to the place where I was actually doing, I was in ketosis, I guess, that's when I realized, okay, there's no carbs. There's no kickback, and I have to learn, I think I have to learn how to manage the process, because there's not that kick or that punch that you get when you get that sugar rush when you do like glue or.
Because you're not running on sugar. You're
Right.
running on fat.
So I'm learning I need to learn how to manage.
So what kind of running do you do?
I normally do, on the 18th, 2 weeks in, I did a 15K, which was my best. I think it was like at 14, 15 minutes an hour, a mile. So that was kind of hard. I'm sorry.
You have to hear yourself in the speaker.
Okay. And so that was difficult for me because I felt like I wasn't doing my best. But I have read where there's a lot of ultra runners that actually do keto, and I'm looking forward to getting to that. But is there anything I can do getting through this process?
Do you take any medicine?
No medical conditions, no medicine.
No Flonase.
None of that.
Yeah. So, thank you. Did you hear so transitioning from, I bet you've been exercising a while, some years, a couple of years, and at a level of how many K in a mile again?
Before keto was between 11, 12 minute mile. And when
So you're monitoring how fast you're going?
Yes.
Okay. And you're a month into the keto diet? Okay. I have some ideas for you. You might want to write them down.
Okay.
So there are a couple big picture issues. If you're not on high blood pressure medicine or have a history of heart failure, you want to make sure you're getting enough salt. Salt. An electrolyte pack, I have no idea what that is. But Finney says, which is kind of like E.F. Hutton says, you remember those commercials? Finney says you need 5 to 7 grams of salt a day when you're keto adapted. Again, not a clinical population where you have high blood pressure, history of heart failure, but in people who are exercising and trying to maximize the ketogenic state, you want 5 to 7 grams of salt a day. So that's kind of rule number 1. Secondly, you're about 3-4 weeks into the change, give yourself a break. In fact, I was at that level you got up where you may not be running as fast, and it's okay. Remember watch the movie Serial Killers too. It's excellent, and it gives you some tips in there, because remember they were running 16 hours a day for 45 days in a row. So watch Serial Killers too. And then there's a website that I like to refer avid runners to, because that's not my expertise. So zachbitter.com. Zach is the world record holder, Z-A-C-H, Bitter, B-I-T-T-E-R. world record holder of the 100-mile race, and also vespapower.com, VESPAPOWER.com. That's run by an athletic trainer who will give you some pointers on how to manage athletic exercise like that. Yes?
Quick question. On the list of the things that have been treated and know about over to, that one. Where in there would autoimmune diseases like lupus and fibro fall?
Where do autoimmune diseases fit on here?
Or arthritis.
Well, so that's it. And you said fibromyalgia and lupus.
Lupus, or the two that just popped into my head.
Yeah, so as far as published science, it's going to be way over here.
Okay.
You're not going to be able to find a paper in the literature. As far as clinical care, I see fibromyalgia get better all the time, and not lupus.
Arthritis.
So that's why I don't see those problems as being near each other at all. Despite what the teaching might be in the training. For other autoimmune problems, like inflammatory bowel disease, that does get better. Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. You're not going to find research papers published. It's more at the clinical experience level. And so this is, there probably should be another dimension here of the evidence we're talking about is clinical without publications yet, or clinical and publications in the literature. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm an evidence-based medicine-trained physician who critiques other people's art. We're like the Siskel, the critics of other people's articles, and so I'm acutely aware of the need for publishing, but then I also know that there's a lot of information that can be obtained by talking to people, and that's that world changing by Facebook, that academia is watching people do this and sometimes being caught with their pants down, so to speak. But fibromyalgia, absolutely, that would be clinical evidence is strong, but lupus, I just haven't seen it yet, and I don't hear about that. In fact, I'm encouraging people to start their own Facebook groups with a disease, call it keto and whatever, and start seeing people clustering together. I learned about a group that is keto and COPD. I've seen asthma get better, but not COPD. But the rationale is actually when you run on fat, you need less oxygen. And if you have a disease where you're having trouble getting oxygen, like COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it would make sense that you would do a little better with a keto diet. So we're learning a lot. Yes?
What can I do to start? I've got my doctor sent a referral to me, but they said September probably before I'll be able to come in to see you. So I'm a former patient of yours when I was doing, I guess you were doing the Atkins.
This is very similar.
It's still similar to pretty much stick to that until I come in.
Yeah, so how do you get started? Well, we're learning the boundaries of doing this where you need a doctor or supervision and where you don't. And so if you're not on medication and you don't have any other serious health problems, you're feeling well, then what you want to do is find a resource. You want to make it inexpensive or free. We have free information at HEALclinics.com, also at adaptyourlife.com. You're not writing this down.
Oh, I remember the Heal Clinic, Adopt Your Life.
I just want you to remember. I wouldn't remember. Never. So adaptyourlife.com actually has another video that I did. There's a video out there, kind of the free side, called the white coat video, where it's a younger me giving the class the handout, and you can find that on YouTube. If you search Dr. Westman Duke diet, I'm sitting there in a white coat. And you know it's the right video because there's an out-of-tune piano playing at the beginning. There's little secrets you can't just get, you know. DietDoctor.com has a great resource for you to get started. Again, if you don't have any medical problems, you can download or print off information there. A lot of great resources. I think it's time to wrap up. So thank you for coming out to the Journal of Health Heal Clinics. Thank you to Heal Clinics for putting on the evening, and hope to see you next month when Amy Berger will be our featured speaker. Thanks.